Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League, where, if you remember, some people were saying the league title was done and dusted an age ago. Who specifically, can't really remember. And it still might be, though, if we're being totally fair about it. Larne did the unthinkable over the past 7 days, dropping points in more than one game, losing a matchup for the first time in an age. Is this the beginnings of a stumble at totally the wrong time of the season, or will it be looked back upon as a minor blip on their ascension towards another Gibson Cup trophy? There's some refereeing controversies which we're going to have to talk about. There's some big misses which went down over the weekend, as well as a metric ton of penalty shouts which we'll sift through over the next hour or so. You know the score. It's your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. How do you follow up one of the most listened to and talked about podcasts you've ever done? Easy. Get in, Keelan Leeper. How are you?
Very good. That's an intro that's unjustified. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed the last episode. Nothing like the anguish of Ross Welsh sends me to sleep. So it was brilliant.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel as though we're talking about last week, which was pretty much a Linfield crisis pod in all but name. We had Mark McGuigan and Ross Welsh on there, and I realised from the response, and I kind of knew it while I was recording it, that everybody that listened to that had two very unique experiences. One, this is awful, Linfield's in trouble, yada yada, how can they fix it? And the other half, which is probably maybe 80% of the league, were like, give me the popcorn, this is brilliant fun, whilst also being slightly annoyed with the word entitled came up quite a lot online, it must be said.
Yeah, look, I understand. Look, we're all going to enjoy when Linfield are in their bad moments, and that's the nature of football in any league. When a big team that you're used to seeing sort of walk it and be so dominant for so long struggles, you start to enjoy their fans starting to lose the head. What I will say is I completely understand Linfield fans having high standards. They've come to expect that, and any drop away from those high standards is cause for concern for them. So, like, I do get it. A lot of the points are really valid. A lot of it is sort of knee jerk as well. So there's probably some truth somewhere in the middle.
There was also people messaging me privately saying nothing like a Linfield crisis pod followed by a 6-0 drubbing of Duncannon Swifts at home.
Yeah, I know. Well, you try to silence your critics, don't you? So wasn't too bad there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be said where I understand some teams, like I'm not a Linfield fan or affiliate, so I understand you're thinking, wouldn't it be great to have won all those cups and trophies and worry about how you can be the best team in the league again? But in turn, you're right. The whole crux of that podcast was about who are Linfield going forward. Can they still be a force? It was more about the business of the Irish League, a case study there with a team who were successful during a different era of the league, and really questioning, has some of their failures or their missteps been due to the fact that other teams have passed them by, and is this team malleable enough, or the people in charge of it, to be able to counteract it? Because what's been happening recently feels like it comes from not reacting to the way modern football has been. We will square that circle. We'll talk about that time and again. But look, big week in the Irish League. There wasn't any crises yet, of course. But we did have two big game weeks. And I've spoke about in this podcast for a number of weeks how pretty much the title has been signed, sealed, delivered for Larne. That is, of course, until Larne dropped 5 points within a week. And if you really look at it, if things went slightly differently in Inver Park on Tuesday, this title race could very much still be in play. It could be, of course, if this is the sign of a drop-off for the Invermen, but it's fair to say in the past 7 days, they do not look like the best team in the league.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously we'll get on to Saturday when we get on to it, but Tuesday was definitely a moment that shakes up the title race a little bit. I think for a long time I was definitely of the opinion that would you say that the title is signed, sealed, and delivered, as you say, in Larne's hands. I would probably say, unless this becomes a rut, a wobble, which I have to say I don't think it will, I would say that they've probably still got one hand on the trophy, but it definitely opens things up a little bit. Glentoran are obviously still in the mix there in third place, and Coleraine are chasing down, although again their weekend result won't have helped them. So they may have got out of jail there.
Absolutely. It's because, well, the Glens are looking quite ferocious. I say they're not looking like the best team in the league. I'm just saying on current form, we have seen even this season that both Coleraine, Glentoran, even include Linfield there, it's not a bad run until multiple games are played. It's a one-off, then it becomes a bad state of affairs, and then it becomes a bad run. So all eyes on Larne's next game. A lot of controversy we have to talk about when it comes to that game at Inver Park between Glentoran and Larne. There was a lot of commentary saying pretty much it was win or bust for the Glens. We will get into some of the big moments in that game, but just to do some of the maths here, if you were to give Glentoran 2 points for the victory there, if they got it, that would then stick Larne on 62 points. Glentoran have 2 games in hand. If you give them those 6 points, they're right there. Because they'll be on 55. They'll be within a point. And then with 10 games to go, we have a race on. That still could happen, but it's really relying on Glentoran keeping this run up, which they're on. Could have went either way, maybe a wee bit shaky on Saturday. So let's not get into too much hyperbole. However, to quote a, let's say, famous 2000s movie, so you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a chance. I think certainly more than you would have said a month ago, with the form that Larne ran. And look, let's not, like, as you say, get into hyperbole. Larne, up until this weekend, were on an 18-game unbeaten streak. Obviously, you have your draws and you've some points dropped in there. But that is a fantastic run of form for what has been a fantastic season. Their goal will be just to make sure that they see it out in the same fashion.
Well, let's go through some of the big moments from Inver Park on Tuesday evening. It ends up being 2-2. Glentoran end the game technically with 9 men, and Larne rescue a late point thanks to an Andy Ryan penalty late on. The first moment of consternation amongst people from East Belfast is the first penalty. It sees Mills clattering into Andy Ryan. What way, obviously penalty was given, what way did you fall when it comes to reassessing?
Yeah, well, again, I'm going off the highlights for this. I was too busy getting drenched up at the Coleraine showgrounds. But to me, that's maybe the less controversial of some of the calls, although as we'll talk about on reflection, there is some vindication, I think, for some of the calls later on. Look, he comes out. He's obviously trying to win the ball. I think he does win the ball. There is an argument that he has absolutely clattered out there, though, with no real regard, and it then comes into whether or not you're in control and stuff like that. He definitely has took Andy Ryan. Um, it's one of those ones where, again, I would be absolutely roaring for it. If it's against me, I would be trying to make the argument that he won the ball. And that Ryan has followed through and just kept his run going. If it was my team, but um, look, I don't think it's the big, massive controversy as such. I think you see those given.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It was O'Neill, sorry, who was running on and taken down by
Sorry.
Mills. It's frustrating, works both ways. I think you could equally be sitting here going, Larne, how was that not giving us a penalty when he clatters into him? So again, unfortunately, these goes both way. They take the lead. Glentoran then get a goal, well, 2 goals in fact, in either half, from Hubin. I don't know how much you knew about the first one, but it still counts, so that'll add to his goal bonus. And then the second one, nice move. Scores the type of goals really I was expecting Hubin to score, come in and pretty much adding that little final touch, running away. And we thought he was going to score a bucket load in this league. He has. He's been the main man I feel as though Glentoran have been asking for. They look good. They look in charge. Up come Larne, trying to ping it back to 2-2. Then another big moment comes. Who been sent off for an off the ball incident? It's, for me, one of those you made the referee have to make a decision.
Yeah, again, we've seen incidents like that at different times in the league, including this season. I think when you spin round like that, obviously there's a bit of gamesmanship from Larne trying to sort of wind a little bit and whatnot. If you spin round like that, you can debate to the cows come home how much contact there is, etc. You have opened yourself up to that booking, and ultimately Andrews can only see what he sees in that moment, and he has decided that it's a bookable offence and that he has to walk.
Yeah, very frustrating that he's even in that situation. But look, it's a big match. Tensions were high. Fantastic away support from Glentoran, it must be said. We'll then get to the second penalty, the late penalty, where Glentoran tried to hold on, and then it was a handball against Kansan Kamara. And looking at the highlights, and I'm sure many of us, that was the way, either watch it live or watch the highlights straight after. You're thinking, where on earth has he got this from? Can't see anything. Looked to be a header from O'Neill, but Andrews was very sure. Massive blowback, it must be said, for Andrews off the back of this game, for not only the red card for Hubin, but then both penalty shouts, particularly that second one being seen as just totally egregious in the 93rd, but well, actually technically 94th minute. And thank goodness we have the boys at Around the Grounds. Christmas card list coming your way from Mr. Andrews, I think, lads.
Yeah, I mean it's quite a funny one. I don't know that referees get many celebratory moments, but I like to think there was a knee slide in the Andrews household that night when the alternate angle, as you might say, the Zapruder film came out. And again, like you said, the highlights, you watch it, there is no hand to be seen. You do not know where that call has come from.
And also, we one thing I always flag here: if you can't make a decision when you know it's coming instantly, then it can go either way. It's hard to call. And even when you're sitting there going frame by frame by frame by frame, it's hard to call it. And you're thinking, what has he seen? And then in comes the alternative angle, and it is a wonder call.
Yeah, it's
People
that.
are going to call that is going to be the moment people are going to give off me for it. But it's in that territory. It's bold. It really is. We don't give referees credit enough for making bold calls. If they see it, they call it. He believed he did. He did see it. He nailed it.
Yeah, oh, you have to give him his flowers, especially as you say, 93rd, 94th minute. Those are big, big calls in a big, big game. That is a situation where so many times, and again, whether it's true or not, you will hear the accusation, oh, he just didn't want to make that call. He didn't want the.
It would have been easier just to go, oh, I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah,
Especially in a game of that magnitude.
yeah. So give him his flowers. He's seen what he's seen. He's made the call. And um, without the alternate angle, it may have went down, and people would have said, "Oh, what a terrible call." But that video from the I know Around the Ground certainly shared was really really clear, and shows that it was actually very spot on. Brilliant.
We'll spin through some of the games that happened last Tuesday there. As we said, coming out of a crisis, Linfield thumped the Swifts. They're a team that really are starting to fall off quite significantly here. Elsewhere, Cliftonville 3-1 against Bangor. That run's not looking great. Carrick do the reverse, whatever your man with the football, with the haircut thing. 5 wins on the bounce. Like, I've just come into my head there. Is Stuart King's record for most amount of points, is that potentially in diffs?
Oh, I never actually considered that. I mean, Carrick for me, it's really interesting. Everyone has talked about how you get beat 7-0 and then you turn into the Galacticos as such. I had a look back to see just how quickly they've climbed this table. 20th of January, they were sitting in 11th, and albeit they're sitting sixth with other teams around them with games in hand and stuff like that, but that's a massive, massive turnaround in performance. Um, Obviously that we'll talk about Saturday, and the win run comes sort of to an end. But yeah, look, really, really dramatic turnaround, and it's a real boost in confidence. You add the County Antrim Shield in there, I mean, it's celebratory gunfire on the streets of Arizona or wherever these boys chipping in are from.
Yeah, lad, Uncle Rico and the boys are having a great time there.
So glad Rico got the shout out. I wasn't going to go there, but I love Uncle Rico.
So,
He's best
look,
character in the Irish League.
for the 6 months they've been following the Jers, this has maybe been the massive highlight. But I have to give credit to Carrick Rangers. Like, there was one way or two ways of this swinging, and with all these experienced players, we thought, well, at least the commentary was, were they going to be able to deliver in the dark, cold months? Were they going to fall off? And we've seen some experience, particularly injury-prone players at other clubs, kind of have a null and void season. But Billy Joe Burns, Lecky in particular, we've seen Crow consistently be one of the better midfielders in the league. Heatley's found his shooting boots again. Danny Gibson's in a good bit of form when you can see him have a purple patch followed by a remember him kind of spell. They are looking tight at the back. McCulloch is once again getting all the love as someone who's just very assured in the ball. Perhaps maybe going under the radar the season he's had. And probably just that one weak point was what they had last year, is that they're lacking that bit of guile between the sticks.
Yeah, although I have to say that's been a fluctuating position for Carrick recently. Um, I believe Saturday, which again is obviously further down the line, but I think that's the third goalkeeper between the sticks this year, which it wouldn't be regular for any club. I have to say, between Gartside, Pengelly, and Donnelly, they have done really, really well.
Yeah, I think the injury to guard side, like as much as between Donnelly and Pengelly, they've been the people with the gloves during this run. You'd think if they had guard side with that higher level of experience, higher level of performance previously, what kind of, I'm going to use that word platform again, what could they be on going forward? Top six is in their sights.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, again, people talk about games in hand, and sometimes I think we can over egg that because if a team's in form and they're not going to drop points, then the games in hand don't really matter as much. And particularly if the teams around you, the guys that are threatening them in around may not be able to close that gap. The likes of Cliftonville, we'll talk about their form, I'm sure, and stuff like that. It wouldn't necessarily suggest that they're going to capitalize on those games in hand.
Well, I've just checked it there. Carrick, they're on 36 points now. We're at that 10 games to go part of the season. Some teams have more, some teams have less. And 50 is what they're aiming to get, which was 24, 23, 24. So that's what could be for them. And they'll have a lot of work to do to get that across the line, it must be said. But who's to say they can't, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's in their purview, and maybe being in the top six if they got it might hurt that. But the one thing that looks somewhat certain, if they can keep up some form of this momentum and they don't fall off themselves, that 11th place, that seems to be in the rear view at current form.
Yeah, it does. And credit to them for turning that around. I think you don't really care about Stuart King's points total if you do make top six, regardless. So, that has been the promised land for Carrick for such a long time in terms of what their aspirations are. So that would be a momentous achievement for the club, particularly given where they were sort of sitting at earlier stages of this season.
If people haven't listened to this podcast before, we haven't mentioned it just yet. Portadown is your team. You made some reference to it there on the Tuesday night game. It was the surprise result, maybe at halftime, going into the second half. You went 1-0 up, but pretty much with one of the last few kicks of the game, it's a set piece again, Keelan, and Portadown take nothing down the motorway from Coleraine.
Yeah, that was a tough one to take. Obviously, a Tuesday night up to Coleraine from Portadown is a fair jaunt. The weather,
Especially if you're coming off the scaffolding.
yeah, especially. I was on half term, so I was happy enough. But yeah, stand or sitting, getting soaked. And you say one of the last kicks, it's the last kick. It is in, you know, it is beyond injury time by the time that the set piece is taken.
Oh, we
Um,
referee dig there, clocked it.
it's not because obviously the foul happens within the allotted time. It takes a while to get that set up. Although it's the setup that potentially lets down. Speaking to Niall after the game, doing the interview, which you know, the first thing I said to him when he came out is, "I don't even know what to say to you, Niall," and he says, "Oh, you know." And you know, at the end of the day, I think we matched them for the whole night. I think we were better than them in lots and lots of places, and we'll maybe talk about Coleraine and if they're still in this fight and what their form will look like. But I thought we were better than them. I think Joe Cooper's finish for the second one is brilliant. It's just inch perfect into the corner. Very little that can be done about it as such. There are mistakes. There's a great moment for the Ports to get a goal up the other end in the second half, and really we just failed to capitalise. There's maybe a squared ball on that isn't seen, with UKick at the back post floating, free, and we don't take it, and then it's at the end the free kick given away and a free man in your 6 yard box, which you just can't have at that stage of the game, especially not against a team like Coleraine.
You mentioned there Coleraine and title charge. They've been discounted ever so slightly recently just because they've had so many more games than the other teams, but not occupying first quite recently. And look, they are somewhat in form, and they could have taken all 3 points on Saturday. We'll not just go there yet, but when you look at it, they played one more game than Larne, which Larne, that game in hand is significant. We don't know who it's against, but on previous form it should be. And they're what, 5 points off, so they don't look totally likely to do it. But again, if they keep their nose clean, they've got 9 games left. It still is in their purview. It's just the Glens thing. It's because you give them those 2 games in hand to have them on level amount of games with Larne. At the minute, it'd be 59, and they'd be 4 points off. So I guess that probably is then as close as Coleraine. If you mark down that game in hand for Larne as a loss, it's difficult. But they get a late win against yourselves. It's strange, right? Because you look at their form table, they've won 4 out of their last 5. They draw against Carrick on Saturday, and you talk about top teams winning, not even ugly is the right way to say it. Coleraine just seemed to lack urgency at times.
Yeah, I think this is something we saw against Larne. Was it on the 2nd of January, maybe? A televised game, perhaps, where there was all the makings of a great team, quality wise, there's no question, but it wasn't necessarily clicking together, and there was maybe a lot of possession on the ball and not a lot of end product. I would say that when we're looking at the form, absolutely, you can see, you know, it's a majority of wins in the new year, bar the loss against Larne and falling out of the League Cup. The draw in Carrick is the only other one that's not a win, but some of the green W's would be deceiving. Like I say, personally, I think we deserved at the very least a point up at Coleraine on Tuesday. So if you're looking at performances rather than results, and obviously it's a results business and that's all that matters, but you would wonder, are they slipping a little bit? Is there potentially a little dip in form coming? And particularly when you look at Saturday's result in the mix there as well. At this business end of the season, you can't really afford to be having those performances as such. So there might be a question of now is the time to step up if you want to still be considered in this title race.
Big time. You look at their games, Coleraine, and they have Ballymena at home. They go away to an out of sorts Dungannon. Cliftonville at home, they'll probably like. And then Glens away is a nice fixture for them because it's put up or shut up, isn't it? It's a chance to really make your mark. At this stage of the season, you might want those games, and obviously the split offers them up to you as well. But they would rather, if they're going to win against a team, they also want to know they are clawing back points against their rivals. So a lot to play for. You look at Larne, their pre-split games, Carrick Rangers, At home, tricky. Linfield at home. This is where the run could go. I know Linfield fans are saying, yeah, good joke. Ballymena away. This Ballymena run doesn't look good. Then they host their bogey team in the Swifts, and I mean they potentially are relegating Glenavon pre-split on the 20th of March. Maybe. But those games, it isn't exactly a battalion of top sides there, but tricky enough. It does feel like Linfield are on the outside looking in and are probably hoping for a Glens or a Coleraine to fall away so they can occupy third, which they would, fingers crossed, toes crossed, be an automatic European place for them. Cliftonville didn't mention this. Cliftonville beating Bangor. Like, we would use Bangor to shift into our Saturday offerings. The Ballymena Cruise game has been delayed a week. It should have happened on Saturday. It should have happened on Tuesday. It's now being punted ahead to this Tuesday. Likely to have happened by the time you've listened to a majority of this. But there's something very familiar about the way this season has went for Bangor. It feels similar to the way Loughgall did, Portadown did coming up. They're another team who's used that momentum from the championship to shock some teams, use home comforts to your advantage, and they're probably the team in least form now, especially when they had a really good chance to get 3 points against the Cruise on Saturday, and some might say they blew it, some might say that they are the team who has been hurt the most by bad refereeing decisions.
Yeah, it's been a poor start to the new year. I mean, their only win of the new year in the league has come against us, in what was quite a poor performance on our end. Um, Apart from that, it's been all losses, except for Saturday's result there. What I would say though, probably the hard work has been done before Christmas, which you sort of alluded to. Um, what I would say to counter that is that Ballymena and the Cruise are circling, you might say. They're certainly not out of danger if you look at the table, just where it's sitting at the moment. We have 2 games on them. We're just below in ninth place. We're 1 point behind with 2 games in hand. Ballymena and the Cruise are certainly within touching distance. They're only at 7 points. But again, Cruise have 2 games and Ballymena have 3 games in hand. So they could get dragged right back down into this.
And that's what makes that draw against Cruise somewhat crushing. You could see after the game, Lee Feeney felt very frustrated. They maybe should have got more against an out of sorts Cliftonville on Tuesday. They then go away again to the Cruise. I was at this game, and I wouldn't say anything really impressed me about Bangor, but they do have this ability just to look very calm and roll with the punches. They never look completely overblown by what the other team's throwing at them. Crusaders once again were trying to play nice football, and I'm not trying to take that away from them at all. But you see this team go through the gears, really stretching their opposition, and yet they were 1-0 down going in at the half, 2-0 quite quickly after the break. Give them credit, they battled back, and if things fell their way, they could have got the points. It's a result which neither team are particularly celebrating. Cruise in 11th with a huge game against Ballymena. Glenavon are looking cut and dry out of it. Of course, that could all change. But looking at this game from a Crusaders point of view, if we'll stick with that, if you haven't seen, I highlighted them on the radio on Saturday. If you haven't seen the 2 misses in the first half, you're missing out, because the Brooks one might be the miss of the season, and the Thorndyke one might be a goal of the season contender, which then he just totally fluffed his lines at the end.
Yeah, those two are the real standout ones. And as much as um, as much as there was a wee bit of praise from the Crusaders bench and whatnot about sort of being resolute and coming back from two down, you do have to wonder whether they really will rue those missed chances. The first one in particular, he's already round the goalkeeper. The hard work's done. You just have to finish your dinner. The second one, as you say, is a bit of brilliance from Thorndike. He's weaving in and out through players and just can't get the final shot on target. So they might find that they start to rue this. The Crews are in a tough position, and it's going to take a lot for them to turn it around.
The good thing for the Crews is that they're playing a lot of their rivals around them, which we've highlighted in the podcast before. Ballymena, Cliftonville to a lesser extent. They've got Cliftonville twice, pretty much within that run. Glenavon and Portadown. But in turn, if they're losing that game against Ballymena, ouch. If they're giving Cliftonville a bit more room by losing that game, ouch again. Glenavon, that could be another sinker. And then your lot Portadown is another fixture where if they don't win out, they're just gifting you more points. So tough all round. The big positive from a Crusaders point of view, Fraser Bryden's fine. He was on the bench. He came on after 60 minutes for Adam Brooks, and he was the man that dispatched the penalty. Chatting to Lee Feeney, which I did after the game, he was furious about the penalty. They come back into the game, do the Crews via a Thomas McGuire cross into Stuart Nixon, who takes 2 bites of the cherry before finishing off his dinner. And then the second one is a big ball, I think, from Thorndike in, and then McGuire and Dean just clatter into each other, and a penalty's given.
It's an interesting one. The first penalty given. What was your thoughts on that?
I didn't go. Oh, what a disgrace! Two players come together well, like I didn't see any of them particularly get the ball, but then Maguire's going for it. I just don't think it's season defining. To be honest, like it could be, but I'm not looking at that going, we have been screwed over by an outrageous call. Referee looks at 2 players coming together and says one of them is a foul. This is not the Warren Point Dungannon scandal from many years ago. Yes. Your boy knows ball here.
No, I just thought it was interesting because it's one that's sort of difficult in the highlights when you're looking back to try and call, and I didn't see much talk about it, so I just wondered if there was anything there. No, look, it's interesting. It's a well taken penalty. The second goal is hilarious to me. The all hail the long throw. It's back.
It wasn't even that long. It wasn't even that long.
Yeah, but it's then like volleyballed back with another header to Cushney, who's the freest man since Morgan Freeman at the back post, and he sort of gets it in unopposed largely. Maybe a trend we've talked about all season, how the Crews at the back, if we were highlighting a weakness, it's probably there. There's something going on there with that, where you just said that was poor.
Yeah, it just lacks quality at the minute. They had Ruff on one side, who I love, Scott Ruff, who again finding his feet since moving across from Stranraer. Then on the other side you had Lewis Barr, I believe, and then in the centre was Forsyth, celebrating his 35th birthday this week. He was playing this wonderful quarterback role, almost like the way Bigorama sometimes used to do for Dungannon earlier on in the season, where he's almost deeper than both defenders, except that's where Forsyth was playing. So playing 3 at the back, trying to break through. Again, it's nice, nippy football when you have Dunlop trying to work with other players. It was quite physical at times. Didn't expect Bangor Crews to get this much light, but the real moment that Bangor are even more furious about, which again is missed by all highlights, is there was a breakaway, not totally like the Brooks's breakaway, but pretty much Arthur's was through and he goes down in the box. I think if that was a home game, the pressure of the fans screaming for a penalty would have changed the referee's mind. He doesn't give it, and what would have been a banger victory, I think, if he had done that penalty. Because to be honest, the Lynch penalty for Bangor was really well taken. On that Bangor, that really looking back on that, I don't know what the penalty's for Bangor. I don't know what that's for. It
Yeah,
seems to be
no,
high, but he does that kind of like leg goes out, flicks back, and then collapses to the ground.
yeah, it's very hard to judge from the highlights. And then the final call, which I know Lee Feeney had made a point of highlighting after the game, the challenge on Arthur's at the very end, like you said, it's absent in all forms of highlights, so I can't comment on it at all. I would say, look, credit to the Crews, they've done very well to get back into that game. I think you probably have to look at it as 2 points dropped for Bangor, particularly when you take the lead and then to lose it in that manner. Um, they'll be frustrated with that.
Yeah, it's a big pre-split preview. Not only are they sitting there with the points, but that they're lacking games. I think they've played 29 in total, so that means that they've only got 9 games left. They do play Glenavon next Saturday, which again, you want to play the worst team in the league every week, don't you? So they better not fluff their lines there. In turn, Glenavon will probably look at that and think, if there's any hope, and it's starting to diminish, of us staying in the league, it's a must win. But a Clandy boy, Bangor have stood a lot more stronger. They play against Carrick again, away at Taylor's Avenue, which is as a pitch hanging on by the absolute skin of its teeth. Eventually, Bangor will play against Glentoran, and that game on the 14th is currently up in the air, and then Swifts against Bangor. So there is points to be won there. In turn, if they give it up, they're giving it up to some decent rivals. I must admit, they do look, maybe based on quality, probably the 11th or 12th team in the division. They're running out of steam. However, like you said, they've got enough there where if they can nick a win or two at home, excellent. But let's be real here. This table is so tight. We'll go through some of the games here before we get into the nitty gritty. But talk about bad pitches. This Ballymena one is coming, a massive story Tuesday night. It's almost like a punchline. Oh, another came off. Well, what can you do? So that Cruise game, again, hopefully it'll get played this week at some point. But they come up against Glentoran on Saturday at the Oval. An angry Glentoran. They actually take the lead through Igor Rakowski. So Sule's having a great time in his revenge game. But then a new signing of their own in Glentoran, without Hubin on the pitch, without Cooney, because they both got sent off in that game against Larne. McAneff steps up. Controversial-ish penalty live in the game for the first one. I think it was actually a penalty. It looks as though Kansa Kamara is being dragged down. And then the second one, a weird punt. But if it goes in, it's a goal.
Yeah, it's a nice wee afternoon for McAniff, definitely. I think, as you say, interesting that Ballymena go one up initially, given that I would say the Lions share the chances not only of the whole game, but particularly that first sort of 30 minutes seemed to be all with Glentoran. And then against the run of play, he starts away and seems to be having a really nice start. I think that's his fourth already for Ballymena since arriving. So a good start for him. Like you said, penalty gets them going. Super finish from outside the box. How much of it is controlled, I don't necessarily know. It seems a very loopy one for me, but it's a great goal nonetheless. And Glentoran will be glad to get that result out of the way. You know, you don't want banana skins at this stage, and we all know that the Glentoran script is that usually when we get to this stage of the year, it's like Mario Kart out there, but no sign of a wobble, no sign of any of this collapse that people are talking about, and it's a team in a relatively good run of form that will be wanting to close those
it
gaps.
feels like a result which suggests that not only can they flash, but they can deal with something being thrown in their face and respond and not falter in the same way maybe other teams did on the weekend there. So impressive enough that they can do it without their main hitters. You mentioned Igor Rakowski there. He's picking up nice goals. It's not the prettiest one there on Saturday, but his run's kind of just been, he's there, and that's half the battle, isn't it? You put it in the net, who really cares how it goes in? It's like that famous thing. All that player does is score goals when it's slacking off some very famous strikers in that regard. Just because I can see their names flashing up here in the team sheets, the one thing you have to mention with Glentoran in that game against Larne, of course they're frustrated with some of the decisions that they felt didn't go their way. But let's be real, you hit the post through Singleton at Inver Park, and unfortunately Jordan Jenkins does all the hard work and can't finish his dinner again. You had your chances against Larne. Not to highlight that again, but you do make your own luck at times.
Yeah, definitely. But look, I would say overall, as we start to look at this Glentoran team, you kind of feel naturally drawn to compare it to Glentoran teams of previous seasons, and this is definitely one that has its act together a little bit more. I think Hubin is a massive part of that. We sometimes talk about the league being sort of bereft of natural strikers, although I would argue with him and Healy, who we'll get on to about or get on to, there's a bit of a resurgence there, but they have a real talisman in the box there. Somebody, a real Van Nistelrooy esque, just can find the net in whatever fashion and just contribute to goals. And look, this Glentoran team is arguably in the best position to challenge than any previously, I would say.
Let's go to a team we were talking about there, Carrick Rangers, as well as Coleraine. 1-1. I think both teams will feel as though they could have won this game. Again, a goalkeeping error, let's say, from the patching corner, which just flew over everybody, and a nice bit of football, I think, worked round thanks to the head of Lecky into the feet of Mikey Place, who finishes well. A lot of these signings for Carrick are doing their bit, even the ones that came in January. A lot of people are hyping up a good game from Matthew Sunday as well for Carrick. So these teams know each other quite well. They've played each other a fair amount over the past number of weeks. Maybe both of them will feel as though, at least I've spoke from people on both sides, feeling as though that they should have won out.
Yeah, I think Coleraine definitely started with the dominance. I think they hit the bar twice in those, and certainly in the game. I think they were both in the early stages. Um, Patching only 8 minutes in with that goal. Interested to know, when is the first time you became aware of this term Olympico? Because I swear it has only entered my radar in the past 2 years or so. Never once did I hear
Okay.
a direct corner being called an Olympico, and now it's all I see it called.
Is that what that is? I honestly had never heard of
Yeah,
that as a
its
thing.
origins are in 1924 when Argentinian Cesaro Onzari scored one against Uruguay, who were the reigning world champions via the Olympics in 1924, and so they called it an Olympico. There you go. There's your history for the pod. But yeah, couple of big chances before halftime for Carrick, which eventually.
No, we're moving on from this way too quickly. Um, I, this has to be like, what's the term when people just say, "Oh, this is a thing," and it's never been a thing, and people just pretend, "Oh yeah, this has
Oh,
always
we've
been a
always
thing."
called it that. Yeah, it's like whenever everyone started calling it a remontada in the second leg when a team comes back. You're giving me facial expressions like you don't know that
Yes,
one.
yes. A
A
what?
remontada, Spanish term. Whenever say there's a two leg like in Europe or whatever, and the first leg
Okay.
doesn't go well and it takes a big comeback. You're thinking Man United versus PSG a couple of years ago, or any of those big comebacks in the second leg is apparently a remontada. Again, never on my radar until maybe the last 2 years or so, and now you hear it all the time. So there is just a wealth of terminology out there for those with ears to listen.
Ban football hipsters, please. Even though it must seem very rich coming from moi. Ban football hipsters, and also ban that weird guy who does football tricks that just goes to games and slags off the league. Go away, please. Outside of that, we have. Uh, well, we'll jump back to Friday night there because they get a win, do Cliftonville against Bangor. Dungannon get thumped 6-0. And it's this strange back and forth game on Friday night down at Stagmore Park, which I think more highlights the weaknesses of both teams rather than suggests the strengths of either.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting game. I like to imagine that when they're picking, obviously it's such a lottery when you pick a game for television. for the BBC coverage. And whenever Niffle are picking a game for their uncut series on YouTube, which I quite enjoy, it's a lottery of whether it's going to be a good game or not. And I have to say, really enjoyable in terms of the back and forth and the score line, plenty of drama, some good goals. I mean, Stephen Scott's goal in the 70th
Love
minute
it. I've been a Stephen
is
Scott truther for a while. I know everyone
yeah, it's a
says I'm a Glenny boy. I am, but I think Scott doesn't get enough love on the right hand side.
yeah, it's a wonder strike from him. Um, Gormley again, just immovable. Really his first chance of the game, and he buries it. Brilliant. Um, Brian Healy, I think obviously somebody you have talked about a lot.
Yes, another.
Somebody who
I need a different name for this, but definitely one of my child's.
Peter's Angels, yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Um, Brian Healy, no, look, as somebody who likes to keep an eye on the championship, having spent a
a lot of
fair bit
time
of
watching
time there,
other teams. Yep.
yeah, myself, he has been on fire. I mean, really, really brilliant, and has continued it. That's his fourth for Cliftonville in red and his 29th of the season, believe it or not. So really, really fantastic stuff for him. Only 21 years old. What a talent. Part of me thinking is that you're heir to Gormley.
Has to be.
Sometimes
Different style of players, but he is just what connects them both is that they are goal getters.
absolutely, and I mean, as one like fades, another one starts up, and as Joe Gormley heads to the retirement home, which is bound to be where he has to be after the length of this career, um, in comes fresh-faced, embryonic 21-year-old Brian Healy to sort of pick up the mantle. But it's really, really good game, back and forth, good goals. McGinty's goal is a great header. And then you have the drama at the end. And Brian Healy's goal, sorry, just to avoid moving on from it, picks it up at the halfway
Yeah,
line, carries it through, brilliantly,
this is what he
brilliantly
does.
taken
He,
goal.
you know, not enough strikers can dribble like him.
Yeah, it's super. He's not just an in the box finisher, he can create the goals as well. But it all culminates in this 80th minute challenge by Sean Leopard on Alves, which leads to the penalty. And to be honest, there's no real argument. It's just messy.
You just don't need to do it, do you?
No, 100%. And then up steps Adam Glennie. Yeah, Adam Glennie steps up and trademark Glennie penalty buries it. So a really exciting game. Great result for the Swifts there, and maybe a sign of worry for Cliftonville, as you say. It nearly resets that little boost that they got on Tuesday night.
Yeah, like I do just think that unfortunately this Cliftonville team are very young, very skillful. You'll be convinced. It's like one of those weird pictures where is it a witch or is it a car or is it a young woman or an old woman or is it a tree or
Arteta
yeah,
team talk.
whatever. You look at one of those things and you're like, is it an angel or
Is it the
that's
hair
it.
or
Yeah,
the
the
duck?
hair duct.
Yeah.
That you made it easier there for me. That's kind of what they are. They'll do something like this, and then they're gonna there's a thumping coming their way at some point, I think, and then they're gonna like draw or get a good result against a top team. They're gonna be hot and cold. They just really lack experience and they lack assuredness throughout the team. But we knew that, and the one thing for them, they've got plenty of games in hand, so they could still slip into this top six. What that will really
Definitely.
do for them, I don't know, because I can't really see them going on a run from sixth or seventh. However, they've got to keep going. Yeah, got to keep going exactly. And I would say, for Cliftonville fans, they just want to see the likes of Hawthorne and Sheridan and co. really step up as well as Healy. Like there's something about that is that just hoping that you give them game time. You're building as this big long almost preseason for next year. The one thing that is looking kind of assured but not really, they shouldn't be 11th realistically.
No, I don't think so. I think, as you said, the three games in hand on Carrick above them, and they only trail by 2 points. They'll pick the result up in one of those somewhere. Um, Dungannon Swifts are in a really interesting spot, I think, because they're well adrift of the top four, but they also have a really decent cushion on sixth place. They're kind of just free and easy. They want to make sure they maintain the top six. Obviously, they're, I would imagine, probably starting to look at the fact that okay, we're still in the cup, and how nice would it be to put a bit of focus on trying to retain that. So they're in a really interesting spot on 43 points. Um, so, things are looking nice at Stangmore too, after, again, what there was a period earlier in the season where they maybe worried a bit.
Yeah, they'll pick up what seems to be the case of they'll pick up points here or there was also giving them away for free. Look, we've held off long enough. A big part of this chat when it comes to the title race is instigated by top three shock of the season. Portadown beating Larne.
Are you putting it up there? Yeah, I'd say so.
What's big? What genuinely? It might be shock of the season. Like what's bigger than it?
Yeah, well, if you're taking out, your cup upsets and stuff like that, it's definitely up there. I think we got so used to pulling off wee upsets.
Like is it
Beating
Glenavon
surely
against
us beating
Linfield or?
Linfield. I know that doesn't look, in hindsight now, seeing Linfield doesn't look as shocking.
No, at the time,
It was big.
at the time, it was like, yeah, I don't think you've beaten them at home for a while. Glenavon maybe beaten Linfield, but also there was something about new manager ish bounce and Linfield just being all over the place. There's something more. You're in such bad form. Larne unbeaten in the league since what was it, October, Halloweenish, whatever. In 18 games, in comes Shamrock Park and that pitch being like, is there a magic hoodoo against Larne? Like, you're building a bit of a run here of Larne haven't won at Shamrock Park for X amount of days.
I would challenge the fact that we're in horrendous form. Obviously, results and what we got over the line. This is
Hey, you might say we're in bad form. You might read the list of results and say we're in bad form. But I want to prove that that is not the case. You know what form means, Mr. Leeper?
Yeah, I'm not going to wax lyrical here. Just to say that I think we have been gradually improving and that this result was coming. Like I said, I thought we should have had points, or at very least a point up at Coleraine on Tuesday. I think we got our rewards because on Saturday, I thought we were better than them. For the 90-minute, people will talk about the red card on Gallagher and whatnot, but for me, we were already well back in that and had been dominant throughout the game. And I don't think that affected things too much. It maybe stopped them from rallying and regrouping, certainly, but I think our quality was brilliant. Josh going forward, super, absolutely sensational game from Josh Ukek, and he had a great game at Coleraine as well. Has really found a new lease of life in this sort of new change up that we seem to be doing at the club. Um, Contributed both assists. And it's a scrappy goal for the first. Jack Scott does well to put it away from, a toenail away. And then Fife has a great first time finish as well for his 10th of the season. So look, we're absolutely delighted. It was a great performance and it has really helped lift the mood.
Just pondering here of how I'm going to rebrand players that I like that other people don't, or just young players that I'm hyping up massively. They're called Dreamers right now. I think that'll be the new one rather than Children, because Adam Toe's dad's told me off for that. Look, Josh Ukek, great week for him, scoring the goal. It doesn't help the result, but he showed what he could do away from home in this was it a more advanced attacking role for him on Tuesday night?
I think so, yeah, definitely, of the last two games, yeah.
So he does that, and then he comes in, and I listened to this game as I was elsewhere on the radio, and it just seemed to be the Josh Ukek show, and they kept describing the type of player which I feel like I've seen when I see Portadown. It's funny, Ukek is kind of in this Corey Smith bucket of the Dreamers, where I defend him and hype him up, and fans who watch him week in and week out say, you are wrong. Can I say maybe I was right about Ukek and maybe he is a striker? Or because that feels like when it comes to his presence, his height, and his ability to run, and his finishing's usually okay. You might think he's a winger, but could this, as a team in Portadown who's struggled for a striker and have been lucky that Fife's had such a decent run in front of goal, could this be your man? He does have 9 on the back of his shirt.
Yeah, look, he definitely has that capability. I can remember when he first had a trial last season up at Armagh City and chatting to Niall after, and he says he can play up top, he can play out wide on the right or the left, and he has that versatility. And I suppose it's just trying to work out what's going to work best for him. He is very good at carrying the ball forward, which sort of lends him to being sort of put out wide. But I do think he's been really effective in that more advanced sort of attacking role, as you say. Really, really solid performance, and he gets Niffles Player of the Game there. The other one, our supporters man of the match, went to Adam Toe, who I thought was sensational. And again, I'm not even going to let you jump in
Long
here and
time
say I
member of the
told you so. I
Dreamers,
told
must
you
be
so.
said.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And look, he was absolutely brilliant. He was everywhere. He was after every ball with energy. I think Niall was very cautious, and rightly so, in the post-match interview when he sort of said, "Look, he's very young. Let's not put the pressure and start talking him up too much and putting that weight on him. If he's allowed to develop in the way that he's going at the moment and is allowed sort of that space and the freedom and I suppose the leeway to do so, where you can say, look, you're gradually developing, you're establishing yourself as a Premiership player. I think he'll be really really good, and his attitude and stuff is brilliant.
It's about finding that position for him because what he can do is hassle players. He's quite good in small spaces, passing the ball around, has that energy as well. And look, I didn't watch the game, but the radio was also hyping him up. So it looks as though he's really stepped up to his opportunity at Portadown. I didn't expect him to start just because his time at Loughgall, he was sometimes in and out, and he'd been playing in the championship, but I haven't seen Gary Thompson on a team sheet for a while, so that feels like the role he's playing. Is that right?
Yeah, you could say that a little bit. Yeah, definitely. Adam himself said that he actually didn't expect it to get starting and playing against Dungannon in the cup, and he sort of took the opportunity, and he's sort of playing with confidence and a wee bit of freedom, where it's like, go out there and show us what you can do. And in particular, he's really good off the ball. And I think when you talk about maybe if you were looking to compare to Gary Thompson, and again, not to put any pressure on the fella because Gary Thompson is made of gold as far as I'm concerned. But the his play off the ball in terms of, as you say, hassling and chasing it down and putting pressure on players, it's there's a similar vein there, which is really really positive.
Yeah, it's this, not to get into the football hipsterdom of it all, but there's a nice little number six maybe in there if you can keep him progressing forward because he's still what 21 or something.
Yeah, very young, 22, I think perhaps, but I wouldn't be. I'd have to check that personally. But
You talk about Niall saying they didn't want to put too much pressure on him in the interview. He did put a bit of heat on some people in that interview. I think he named somewhere between 5 and 10. Is he taking names after that bad run, which you claim wasn't a bad run? He keeping receipts,
no,
pointing to fans, going, "It's you."
no, like that was the old Ronnie move. I think a lot of people were convinced Ronnie had an actual book with names, but no, look, the way I see it, Niall is one of these managers who I think quite often people are too quick to start talking about pressure. I listen to different commentators and different journalists and different people within the game, and it's largely a unanimous voice, which is there should be nobody really panicking at this stage. Portadown are at a stage in our sort of life cycle at the moment, re-establishing ourselves as a permanent fixture in this league. You are going to have these wobbles in form, and I wouldn't characterize it as any more than a little wobble in this new year. Um, I think if Niall's going to take sort of pressure and look, I'm under no delusions. We can be a very fickle fan base at Portadown, second maybe only to the Glens, in terms of moods can change very quickly. I think if Niall's going to take any sort of criticism or heat, he's perfectly entitled to, give a little bit back or give a little bit of a fist bump when all comes good. And as I said, the results have been improving. There have been tactical changes. He's been responding to results, and we got our rewards for that. And a lot of credit has to obviously go to the players and the sort of the never say die attitude, but it also has to go to Niall as well as the manager.
Well, big result, as I said, maybe top three shock of the season, and the games coming up. You have Cliftonville on Tuesday, which will park, but games against the Swifts coming up next Saturday. Glenavon before the end of the month. There is then Ballymena before Linfield away and Crusaders at home. Points on the table, but also if you don't put up your end of the deal because I still think Portadown are in the mix to drop down into 11th. You can't let that crack in the door let some light in. That's a relief. I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago saying that some teams are maybe only 1 or 2 wins away from looking good. That doesn't feel the same way because some of these teams are likely to get points just by the virtue of playing each other. Will they sink down? We will have to see. But the final game we haven't talked about, it's the finishing off of Crisis Week for Linfield by adding a couple more goals for them and exercising the ghost of that other shock we talked about when they lost to Glenavon at this fixture. A man who knows that ground very, very well, Matthew Fitzpatrick, scored 2 after did he grab a whole boatload against the Swifts, and he knows that ground so well. He was happily celebrating in front of the home fans.
Yes, I'm so glad that you raised it because I didn't want to be the one to do it. But yeah, no,
Did he forget what shirt he had on?
yeah, he was a wee bit of a shush though. There was a bit of a shush.
Doing a Joe Gormley. I know that's kind of Joe Gormley's like, where's the opposite fans? I
Yeah,
scored, everybody.
yeah. No, look, it's a fairly sort of resolute performance from Linfield. I think you could see a clear gulf in quality. The first goal is just the basics done right on the counter attack and a really good finish. I think Andrew Doyle had said that Carney probably would have had a hand to it, only he slipped in making the save, which, Carney's a great goalkeeper, and certainly that won't be used as a black mark against him or anything. Second one's a great strike, but has to be dealt with better. There's danger that really should have been cleared there. It's kind of pinballing around the box for a little bit before he gets it off. And the last one's a really easy back post finish for Taylor. And there's nothing really that Carney can do. I think it's McMullen, I'm not 100% sure, has the opportunity to clear it and sort of fluffs his lines a little bit and leaves it wide open. Clear golf and quality. I think Glenavon were really poor at the back. You can pick that up from Andrew Doyle's post-match interview. I think he said that Linfield had 5 shots within the box alone. And Carney, despite a couple of great saves, what can you do with that? They're getting into a must-win position at this point. I will be, for the record, the last person to acknowledge that Glenavon are going down. There was part of me wanted to play Lonely this Christmas over the Tannoys at Boxing Day, but I knew that might come back to bite me. But it's certainly getting close to that stage where, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, the final nail will be put in the coffin at some point.
Will it be a blue coffin? Not to say that this will happen, but I have heard talk of maybe not a coffin, but I have heard of maybe wearing black to a certain game if something was to change. So we'll see. The team in black though on Saturday did win out. Look, you just give me stick when I mess up. It's quite rare, but you still do it. But I actually got a little bit of kudos this week. Last week I said, hey, I've talked about it for a while. Why don't Linfield just strap the rocket to that fella Sam Taylor? Sam, walk on down. You're in the Dreamers. Great week for him.
Yeah,
Brilliant down that left hand side. Not in both games, it must be said. And look, he's not their player yet going into next season, but at least he's not a listener to this podcast, but at least maybe someone shared the message.
yeah. Oh no, there's quality there. I was quite impressed with them when we played up at Windsor actually, earlier in the season. I think if I'm definitely thinking, I'm nearly certain it was him playing that day who I was quite impressed with. But yeah, there's clear sort of quality there. The one thing I would say, it's all well and good talking about beating Glenavon 3-0. I don't think that's enough to silence the Linfield choir as such. And they'll be taking that as that should be non-negotiable, that we should be putting performances in against a Glenavon team that's struggling that much. So I think there's still work to do for Linfield to sort of win hearts and minds.
Yeah, what's most interesting about the Fitzpatrick shushing is that maybe you've heard this, but there's been slight talk. Well, if Fitzpatrick maybe decides that the full-time thing at Linfield ain't for him, or maybe later on in his career, if there's one club he's going to go back to, it's going to be Glenavon. Maybe with all this money coming in, could we see that if they were to go down and up? Could that be a long-term marriage? Trouble in paradise there.
Yeah, well, we'll
Perhaps,
see if
but
Linfield decide full times for them as well.
that's true. That's true. They've got a lot of work to do to try and get Europe, and that is definitely a storyline we're looking at. Let's talk about Glenavon ever so slightly. I know you're going to hate it, but realistically, the little spurts of form have subsided. They are in a really difficult position. 10 points off Cruise, with every team above them having games in hand. That Ballymena Cruise game, like, every result's a bad result for Glenavon there. But I talked about it, right? Glenavon have 10 games left in this season. But Crusaders have got 10 points on them. Ballymena have got 10 points on them. Over these next few games, I'm more than 10 games. Obviously, in the split, the most amount of points they can get is 15. We saw last year Linfield winning the title before the split. There was a real scenario here beyond just it looks as though Glenavon are going down. And I can tell you enjoy this conversation. But Glenavon are in the drop zone of being relegated before the split.
You will not hear that from me. I will be the last person to acknowledge that they are down until it is mathematically certain.
If
Uh,
Ballymena and Crews, either of them or both, win two more games than Glenavon before the split in the next 5, 6, whatever it is, games for some of these teams, they're relegated for the split.
yeah, so it certainly looks that way. You might say that I couldn't possibly comment.
And you play Glenavon at the end of the month. So
Yeah, that'll be fun. And look, I'm not going to say it. Look, it's all 100% possible. It could be a great escape. It would be one for the history books. It's certainly possible. I'm going to take the opportunity because I can't imagine it'll be on before that. If it does happen. Look, if I can give some sincere advice, my first advice would be get it right round you. But my second, more sincere bit of advice is Championship is a great league. It is a difficult league. You know that from having watched it and covered it. But you can enjoy it. I have, as a relatively late comer to the Irish League, have spent as much time in the Championship as I have the top flight. And there are great clubs, great grounds, and you get to tick those off. Maybe grounds you haven't been to in a while, grounds you've maybe never been to before. Um, you get celebrations if you are fortunate to get promoted, and you get your trophy lift. And I still count our championship win as some of my top sort of memories. It was really good. You don't get a trophy night and a night on the beer for finishing a resolute eighth in the top flight. So enjoy it if it happens. But like I say, I will not write off this Glenavon team until the fat lady has sung as such.
and to be fair, neither am I. Their games coming up is going to be Bangor on Saturday, followed by Crunch Clash against Ballymena the following Tuesday. Then before the end of this month, they're at home to you, huge game. Then they go away to the Cruise and Larne. So, like, these next games are crucial, but in turn, most
And
of these
they've
teams,
shown that they can.
yeah,
Yeah, they've shown they can beat any team though. I mean, they've done it quite a few times. There is an upset in the tank, and there's nobody can question that they'll be motivated and up for it. So look, again, I'm keeping fairly stum as much as I wanted to get my little piece out there. Until I see it, I'll not be taking any joy.
yeah, I'm sure that Glenalm fans appreciated the little ruffle of the hair, which you gave them through this podcast. But we move up then, just because we said we'll come back to this about all this current situation, the mid-table muddle as it was christened by Mark McGuigan earlier on this season. Crews 27 games, 25 points. Ballymena 26 played, 25 points as well. That win, I mean, what a bad weekend it could have been for the Crews had Ballymena got a result against the Glens and they hadn't got a point there. But like, Ballymena are feeling wick. They really are. This change of manager is not, and all the transfers that have come in, it does hurt because this pitch has held them back. But that is going to be a hard game to call, and we'll talk about it. But you'll feel good because there's 6 points between yourself in Portadown and those two teams, and then Bangor is sitting there in 32. Realistically, a win for either Bangor or Portadown over the next 2 weeks should set them up, particularly if Ballymena and Crusaders draw, push them away. But that, you could really see a lot more dramatic games, as often is the case, in the bottom half of that split. If you're looking at that split being Glenavon, Cruz, Ballymena, Portadown, Bangor, and or Cliftonville slash Carrick, right? That could be. And look, actually, the thing about for both Portadown and Bangor is that particularly the Ports playing Cliftonville, I think on Tuesday, seventh all of a sudden's not out of reach either.
Yeah, look, that, as you said, the mid-table model, everyone is still in the mixer there as far as I'm concerned. When you look at the Crews, you look at Ballymena, you look at ourselves in Portadown, Bangor, even, I mean, Cliftonville, depending on how their form goes, a slump puts them in there as well. Um, it's all still,
They have played like 2 to 3 games less than everybody else, 4 games less than Bangor. Like Bangor are about to play the 30th game.
yeah,
That's the worst thing about them being on 32 points.
yeah, I know. So like they are still in all in the mix as far as I'm concerned. Cliftonville maybe less so than the others, but all still to play for. And I've always said bottom six more crack anyway. There's it's always livelier. There's always so much more jeopardy. It's one of the reasons that I'm a big defender of the split season, and because it just keeps everything really interesting right until the end.
Yeah, I think so as well. You can feel the jeopardy coming in both ways, and like I often talk about this. Would you shake my hand for 10th right now?
Horrendous question to throw at me of a Monday night. Um, the goal here, perspective, please. License and registration, please. The goal has always been safety and securing safety. If you could guarantee me today that we weren't going to get dragged into the mire of 11th place and the heartache that would be involved and the thought of a playoff against any of those high flying championship teams, including that team which will not be named, the noisy neighbours as such, um, that's unthinkable for me at this stage. However, I do think we're in a great position. I would argue, and while I'm hopeful that form is sort of turning for us this calendar year a little bit. Hopefully, it's not a flash in the pan. I would hope that we can sort of aim for that sort of aiming for eighth in ninth where we are currently. Um, I'll spin the wheel, like
So that's you're rejecting said handshake.
slap it out of the road. No, look, you have to bit of crack, believe.
Aye, aye, big crack.
Do not play this
Cruz with
clip.
Dev.
Do not play this clip if it's
Ross Wells is just
yeah,
recorded, hit
yeah.
record on the phone. Crusaders, Ballymena, I think would definitely shake my hand for 10th. Bangor as well. That's the team I have my eye on. I think more than any. That Larne win just totally changes the perspective of Portadown season. It could be a minor freak result, but yeah, a lot to play for all those teams. Like we don't usually talk about the Tuesday night games, you know that, but just to flick through them because they're interesting. Swifts play Linfield again. Yeah, cool, whatever. Ports Cliftonville, Ballymena Crews. Would you take a draw against Cliftonville? It's a winnable game at home.
It's definitely winnable on the back of a bit of momentum, but again, you sometimes can't be too greedy. Part of me looks at Cliftonville's sort of poor run of form and says, "Oh, we should definitely be targeting all 3 points and sort of get greedy with it." Again, though, if you want to put your pragmatic head on, you want to build up those points, I maybe would. But I back the boys. I back them to do it. And if you fancy watching that game, yours truly will be on commentary for that tomorrow night on We Are Ports TV. So
Always a salesman. And
always,
because I actually think I covered this same fixture earlier on this season where you look good and then Cliftonville went on and scored a few, but that Cliftonville team, different kind of side. And actually, Portdown have added a lot of strength and a bit of depth. Maybe not up top, but maybe they found that in UKEC. Ballymena Crusaders, like what way do you want this to go as a Portadown fan?
it's a it's so hard to judge. I mean,
Because actually,
one
by
result.
winning your game against Larne, that Bangor Cruise draw is probably better for you than one of those teams getting a 3 points. No?
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. And look, there's this thing in that. Do you want them to take a point just to sort of keep that gap as minimal as possible and not let a team get away? I don't think, say for example, a Ballymena win, does that sink the cruise enough for it to be worth them breathing down your neck? I don't know. Um, so there's part of me saying I'll take a draw there and hope we get a result as well, to just sort of increase that gap a little bit on both teams.
What way?
Obviously, Ballymena have the game in hand, which is a
Yeah.
factor as
What
well.
would your prediction be? I can see that being a 0-0, 1-1
Yeah, it could be. It could be stinking. That's where is that game? Just sorry,
at the Ballymena Floodlands.
Ballymena potentially with the advantage there on that factor alone. But the the form for those two teams wouldn't be wicked now. Ballymena have only played 4 league games this calendar year. A draw and 3 losses, so it's not looking great for them. But I would maybe give them a slight edge in that fixture, just with the home advantage.
Well, yeah, I think it'll be 1-1, 0-0 perhaps, but I kind of can't see Cruz winning it away from home, to be fair. And don't be getting too cocky about surface. I mean, that Shamrock Park pitch is hardly the Maracana.
Oh no, I'm not throwing shade, and actually, it's one of my biggest pet peeves in the league at the moment is people giving off about surfaces because not all clubs have the same means and the same finance, and particularly when you see how hard ground staff work, I absolutely hate people giving off about surfaces. But yeah,
Minor point. You could maybe just pay some players less and invest in the ground, but we'll shove that to the side. Corey and Ballymena. The difficult thing here for Ballymena is that you have to play it so quickly after Tuesday, and Corey will be feeling better, and Sule may be coming from a day's work somewhere.
yeah, look, it's an interesting one. Again, I think it probably goes with Coleraine, and it's probably you would hope from their perspective it's a nice little reset for them, to stop again. Like I said, they got the points against us, but the performance wouldn't have been fully there. They'll have been disappointed to drop points as such at the weekend. This is maybe a good time for them to face Ballymena and sort of get back to winning ways, and I would be confident enough that that will be the case.
So would I, but then again, I said it was going to be how many were longer to score against Portadown, and we all saw how that went. I'm going to back Corey in there to win. I think at home in particular, on that surface, that they really should see it out. Larne against Carrick, I think. Do Larne have the confidence to go out and take it to this Carrick team? Because they've been a tricky side for Larne to take on. I think Larne, we talk about that Corey and Larne game. I think what the real strength of Larne was their physicality, their calmness and confidence on the ball. That could easily be nullified by the size and the physicality of this Carrick team.
Yeah, definitely, and a Carrick team that are sort of in the form of their club's life in many ways. Barring your Irish Cup win and stuff like that, this is a real historic moment for them in terms of uh, how patches of form go. I definitely wouldn't rule them out. Again, it would keep things very interesting if they were to take a point up there, and consequently Larne were to drop 2. Yeah, I'm gonna try predict that one, and just to keep things interesting, see a wee 1-1 there. What are we calling this, by the way? Because this is a derby weekend for
Oh,
everybody.
It's the East Coast Collision.
Is it the East Coast Collision? And
It's the
Coleraine
East Coast
Ballymena is the
is the not really a feisty derby.
okay, fair.
I can't believe it's not a feisty derby.
Yeah, because it's all derbies except for ourselves, the two Mid Ulster sort of matchups.
Well, maybe that's because you're likely to be playing Dungannon on Boxing Day later on this year. So I'm actually going to back Carrick Rangers to win the East Coast Collision.
Win.
2-1. Yep, I think Carrick's going to win 2-1.
Okay.
This tear which Lecky's on, I think, particularly if was it Ridley who Larne were missing against Ports. Maybe he is the
It
man that
was, yeah.
really makes them tick at the back. Albeit they might be two of the tallest boys just looking at each other eye to eye. We go to Saturday. Do you give any hope for Glenavon beating Bangor at 3 o'clock?
Oh yeah, certainly possible. Absolutely, I wouldn't rule it out. I think. both teams in this situation are not that Bangor are in the danger must win territory, but if you're talking about trying to sort of turn around form, particularly maybe having feeling that they dropped points there, if that's your perspective on Saturday, it they'll definitely be chasing a win and well up for it and well capable of it. But this is do or die for Glenavon in many ways, literally, in fact, and um, they will come out raring for this one. And again, we know that they have it in them to beat any team. I suppose the leveler, or not even the leveler, the thing that maybe s- swings it slightly towards Bangor's favour is the Clandy boy factor and the fact that it's not at Mornview. Um, Certainly possible. I'm going to say it's a 2-0 Bangor.
Okay, so you hype it up. Anything could be possible. Dream your dream, but also it's going to be a loss. I think draw
Give me
central here.
plausible deniability.
Nil nil. Well, typical. Nil nil. And yeah, probably doesn't please either manager there, or that's like a crazy 5-4.
Yeah, it has. It
And
has that.
anything truly is possible. That's the type of game I get sent to where there's like two red cards in the first 3 minutes. Cliftonville Cruise. Ooh, I actually am gonna back the Cruise here. I feel like I saw a team which maybe just has a bit more about them, especially on the carpet of Cliftonville. I think they could maybe get in behind the back line of Cliftonville and score a few goals. I'm gonna say 3-1.
Oh my goodness. No, I'm complete opposite. I was partially thinking a 3-0 Cliftonville, 2-0 Cliftonville as a real sort of statement result to, you know, reset after Friday night there. I just keep thinking about what Brian Healy can potentially go on to do, and how he can finish his season, and the fact that Gormley is still there, and just the form that we're looking at, and the Cruise, it's hope as well. I'm going to go for a 3-1 Cliftonville, 3-0 potentially.
Ooh,
In fact, 3-0.
big difference either way. We both think someone's going to score 3 goals, but we're picking for different sides here.
But
That's
if
just
you look to me, and again, not to sort of drag it out, but if you look between Cliftonville and Cruise, who's the team more likely to score 3 goals?
if Bryden's up and running.
Yeah, true. It's
I,
what Bryden and what Thorndyke are we potentially looking at is what the Cruise comes down to from now on out.
yeah. Now, Crusaders have to try and hit the target. That would help in the scoring goals scenario. But I don't know. I just think because it's not a grass pitch, that could help them. And if there's going to be any game where they're going to raise their game because they're in a tough situation, I think it's going to be that one. Yeah, Ports against Swifts. Like if Dungannon run into a bit of diffs next year and do a Newry, I mean we're going to have to find a name for these two teams facing off against each other? Is there a name? It's definitely a fixture where I feel as though Dungannon want you to dislike them more than perhaps Portadown dislikes the Swifts.
Straight facts, straight facts. Dungannon were a team I never really minded. It was like, oh, they're the neighbours slightly further
But I'm right.
afield.
I'm right. When you got relegated, there was a bit of ooh and an, and since then there's a bit of a Dungannon don't like Portadown, and Portadown are a bit like, meh.
Yeah, it's the Don Draper, the I hate you. It's the I don't even think about you. But there is a bit there. Like they have sort of annoyed me enough with us getting relegated over there and how much they made of it and stuff like that. And again, they're a team in form, so who've won the Irish Cup last year or in a great position. So you have to give them that respect of giving them some dislike in that regard. But look, um, I think if you're given a name for that, what is it? The motorway fray? I don't know. There's a couple of roundabouts between us. There's something
Mid
to be done
Ulster
there.
Meyer, the I don't know.
Yeah, no idea. But I think in terms of this game, I think again, and I'm relying on us having turned a corner a little bit here, and this being the beginning of a little bit of momentum that gets us over the line in terms of safety. I'm hoping we carry that in tomorrow night against Cliftonville, and I'm hoping that it continues into the weekend. And being Shamrock, rather than Stangmore, which will limit sort of the ball playing that Dungannon like to do.
Ah, yes,
Um,
the ability to play actual football. I see your tactics here. It does hurt the Swifts that it is away from home. They look like yin and yang off a carpet. They really do.
yeah, and look, bear in mind we just played them in the cup and they were well fit for it. But I would like us to sort of be very resolute is my word of the week. I don't know. I would like us to sort of have a very sort of disciplined performance where we're very much in the game and we get a goal that separates it. And I'm going to hope for a 1-0 win.
We have 5 game there, so you can. Oh, we can't really do a double up unless you. No, you can't. Sorry about that. You're just gonna have to commit to Portadown, Dungannon, and the Mid Ulster Muddle, perhaps. If you want to go to that game, I'm actually gonna back you. I'm gonna go 1-0 Portadown there. Maybe a penalty that's scored with 20 minutes to
We
go
don't
and you
get
hold on.
those.
Well, maybe if you run towards a keeper, a referee will decide it's actually the keeper's fault. Give it a go. Believe. Linfield against Glentoran. This would really cap off a crisis week and a half for Linfield by beating Glentoran and throwing water on their title charge.
No, no, no. I'm here for the plot. I'm here for Glentoran scenes on the pitch at Windsor, back in the title race, statement result, um, pandemonium at around the grounds. It's what I want, and I'm going to say it's going to be a very feisty, very lively, a great one to watch back 2-1 Glentoran.
There's a there's definitely a small section of Linfield fans, let's say between 5 and 10, who are probably going into this game with the idea that they want Linfield to win, but they'll be absolutely delighted if Glentoran do win, so they can go, "Ah, see, we're really rubbish." I know there's
Yes,
fans like that at every club,
it's the
but there's
biggest illness in football, but yes, no, you're absolutely right.
there's a
There are
feeling there are
people.
some Liverpool fans who will want to be proven right of how bad this is, and then if they win, they go, "Yeah, but Glentoran were rubbish." I think this is a 2-0 Glens, maybe. Although usual, every time this game comes up, we'll have to put in this little asterisk. It's usually boring. And it's usually 0-0.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
That
actually usually 0-0. It's like you with form and saying it's not actually bad form, even though you lost all these games. I'm sure that hasn't been the actual case, but it's always felt a bit 0-0, 1-1.
Yeah, yeah. Unfulfilled sort of potential and promise. But yeah, no, I just back it to be a real sort of a real statement result that'll be remembered and that sort of thing. So I'm gonna go for the 2-1.
Keelan, it's that time of the season where there's like 10 or so games left for some of the teams, and it's where I start asking people, putting out their statements, their feelings, their emotions, their nods about coming to the end of the season. 2 questions you're going to get. Obviously, you're going to say it's not going to be you. Who do you think will eventually finish 11th and why? And while you're thinking about that, who would you give player of the year to as it stands, and is it very much still in play?
I think 11th is going to be Crusaders. I'd love to give you a justification. I just when I look at the toss up between the teams involved, and I'm not just looking at Cruise and Ballymena, I'm looking at ourselves there, and I'm sort of looking at Bangor too. I just think the Cruise will be the ones that will struggle to get the points they need. So I'm going to say the Cruise. That said, I think come playoff, I don't I don't know. The championship is in such a good state at the moment in terms of an exciting league to watch and teams who are firing on all cylinders. But I still think there is just something about that playoff system that really it takes something special for two teams to come up. So I think that they'll finish 11th, but they'll be okay in the playoffs. Um, Player of the season. Wow, that's one I wasn't expecting. Um, it's difficult, and arguably this all sort of comes down to as well who wins the title. I don't know who you pick out of that Larne squad as your player of the season potentially. Um,
It's funny. It's starting to feel like Ridley is the like I was somewhat maybe going. It's unlikely he will because he hasn't shined. I'm going to help you out here. I would say if it was being locked in today for your like 3 nominees for Player of the Year, it's probably
Pat Hooven.
Ferguson,
No.
Pat Hooben, and maybe Joel Cooper. Don't say it out loud, but probably just based on goals and name recognition.
Yeah, potentially, although I think it's very difficult to come away from last season where he is your standout player of the season to then award it again for a season that he has had is less of an impact fair. He's been less in the spotlight, let's say, and has been less clear cut ahead of the pack. Um, yeah, Pat Hooben's up there in terms of just straight in impact. He is the man that I think anyone would take into their team. Maybe not from a long standing, like long term plan position, but like if I dropped him in now for in the form he's in and got him, I think everyone would want it.
Well, why? Why? This is the Shelvin thing, isn't it? Why? Why would Hooben get in and not Shelvin?
Great question.
I know Hooben scored more goals this
Yeah,
year, but
no, I think it's a
nonetheless.
great question because I think Matthew Shevlin is perhaps one of the most unjustly unrecognized players in this league, consistently in the mixer at the top end of the scoring charts. Shevlin's definitely there. Do you know what it is? I think that expectations, and I would like to point out my expectations for Coleraine. I did think it's going to take more than this season for them to get where they need to be. I think because of what maybe hopes a lot of people had for Coleraine, it feels difficult to give them a player of the season if they don't win the title, and I don't think they will. Whereas I think Glentoran, you could be looking at the end of the season going, no, this was real progress for the Glens, and Pat Hooven was a big part of it. That's maybe messy logic that I'm applying to myself there, but that's sort of where I am.
It's. I'll say this, and I'll leave it there. You haven't given me an answer there, but I will just highlight this. A player that I feel as though looking back, I absolutely I didn't back myself enough. I should have put Wiley in my half team this season, and I think the fact that he's continued his good form that he had with Portadown and nailing down that place in the Korean team, I think makes him a strong contender to feature in the 11. Would you? Would that does that feel good to you, or is that a rogue opinion?
Yeah, no, sensational
Because
player,
he
and
was good. He was good for Portadown. I felt, and
fantastic.
and he's showing all those skills and ability on the ball even more in a better team.
I think people questioned how much it would translate. Is this a star in a Portadown team who gets lost in a squad of, your Patchings and your Shevlins and your Coopers and whatnot in Coleraine? But no, Ben, and full credit to him for his work rate and everything else, has put his name into that starting lineup. And I think for all the hopes that Coleraine would have had signing him based on what they had seen at Portadown, I would say he's lived up to that, and there's been no drop off, or he hasn't even really needed a bedding in period. And that's again not to sort of overhype or anything like that, but I think he's been absolutely fantastic, and a great addition for them.
Keelan, a lot of hypotheticals there, but interesting ones all the same. I do know people enjoy talking about it. Nice to get into the nitty gritty of Portadown at times, because I know it doesn't get the club doesn't get a lot of shine on the podcast every once in a while. But we've got people like yourself to come on. So thank you very much, and I'm sure you're sadly realizing that the season is almost coming to a close in the sense that what you've got end of February, March, and a bit of April. But you're also looking forward to you're going to be off soon, and that'll be nice.
Yeah, oh, it'll be great. I have to say, the one thing I've loved since again, I'm only in the media team, but from being a little bit more involved in terms of behind the scenes, summer's actually brilliant because it's so busy. The signings are happening. You're down at the club very often. Like last summer, I was at Shamrock 3 or 4 times a week between getting kits organized and all that stuff and deliveries. So it's been really, really enjoyable. And actually, I love pre-season. I love everything. So it doesn't really stop.
And another hypothetical thrown at you: who's going to be the Northern Ireland manager if Michael O'Neill moves on? Because that's a funny story that came up.
Is there See, my understanding of it was they were really quite explicit in that terminology of temporary. Is it in the
It,
event he is
he keeps
tempted
Blackburn
away and
up.
asked to continue?
He keeps Blackburn
Yeah,
up. Yeah.
it's not even a possibility I want to entertain. I think
Said,
in
said, need a
what
manager that's
you,
maybe won trophies, has an affinity with the Northern Ireland fans, maybe knows the players in a sense. If only there was a manager out there.
I'm not going to say the name.
Well, we'll all just sit in the silence.
Yeah.
Bye, Keelan.
See you later.
Thank you one and all for joining me once again for another episode of Kick a Match. Been a nice couple of weeks. Keelan did a great job this week. I thought a couple of big things, but another three. But look, if you're new here and you haven't followed or subscribed to me on whatever your platform of choice is, highly recommend you do that. It's been the old podcast, just the way the schedules went, where I've actually put it out a day early, or maybe earlier on Tuesday, and you would have missed that unless you subscribe to the podcast. It's free, it's easy, it's chill. Just go on to Apple Podcasts or the main page Kick a Match on Spotify, hit the wee button or the dots and subscribe, follow. It's free, as I said, it's easy, and you get a little notification to say it's up. You can do it on both if you want, but you probably don't need to. If you haven't followed me on all those channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's Kick a Match there. It's even TikTok if you want to look at Keelan, because there's a video of him up there as well. Fingers crossed it doesn't get cold. It's been cold. It's been wet. Rain, go away. See you the same next week. Bye-bye.